We're learning the third Sikha on Parshas Vayeira in Chelek Chof on page 73. The shir today is being learned L'Le Nishmas, Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Menashe Koltman. B'shayches zum Nisayna Akedah. In connection to the test that Avraham Avinu was tested, the Akedah, to bring his son Yitzchak as a sacrifice, was es gewendet Zente von the Asar Nisyanis was Nisnasa Avraham Avinu, which was the 10th of 10 tests that Hashem tested Avraham Avinu. Sagt the Gemara tells us, as das was der Eibishter hat gesagt zu Avraham, kach no es bin chagaymer. Why is it that Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, no, I request of you, I'm asking you, please, you should bring your son. Lashon bakasha, it's a request, not as a command. Mein zu sagen, what this means to say is, nisisicha bekam nisyanis. I tested you with various tests. V'amadata b'kolan, and you withstood all of them. Achshav amayidli b'nisayin zeh. Now you should withstand this test as well. Sh'layomru ei mamish b'rishayim, so that they should not say that there's no significance to this, that you withstood all of the previous tests. That's why Hashem is begging Avraham Avinu to withstand this test, the nisayin of the Akedah. Darf man verstehen? So the question here is, was is the time, was wenn Avraham wird nicht beigestanden dem Nisayin Akedah, wird man gesagt, ein mamish b'rishayim. What is the reason that if Avraham is not going to withstand this 1/10th test, then it would be said that there's no significance to the fact that he withstood all other 9 tests. Das wird nur gemeint, als sein Mesiris Nefesh is nicht as so viel wie es meint, the Nisayin Akedah. If he can't withstand this test, all it would mean is that his self-sacrifice is not on the level that the Nisayin of the Akedah demands. However, there's no proof from this, as the alle friedige Nisayin is that all previous tests, was Avraham is beigestanden, that he did withstand, is ein ben mamish, that there's no significance to that. Or befrat, as the Nisayin Akedah is given, a Nisayin kosher beYoser, and especially that this test of the Akedah, bringing his son as a sacrifice, is a very difficult test. So the fact that he can't withstand a very difficult test is no proof at all regarding previous tests that he did withstand. In Klolis, Parshas Akedah, regarding the whole Parsha of the Akedah, Vazi is, which is, as the Barbanel says, that the Rebbe is quoting here his expression, that Kol Keren Yisrael is Chusam. This is the strength of Yidden and their merit, L'fnei Avim Shebashamayim, in front of their Father in heaven. U'lechein Hishgura Befinu B'Tfilaseinu Kol Hayom. And therefore this is always in our Tfilah, every single day we say the Akedah and so on in different places in davening. Over the year we mention it. Is Yedua the Shaila, so the Shaila, the question on this is known. Favos the Monen Mir, Tomid Akedas Avraham is Yitzchak. Why are we constantly mentioning the Akedah that Avraham Avinu brought Yitzchak as a carbon? Yoser ma'akedas kol achsidim v'akdeishim shemosru atzma makdushas Hashem Yisbarach. More than all of the other pious Yidden and holy Yidden that actually gave away their life for the sanctity of Hashem's name. Kagayin Rabbi Kiva v'Vayeira, Rabbi Kiva and all of his colleagues that died on Kiddush Hashem. V'chol ha'kedoshim asher b'chol devedar, and all of the other Yidden, the kedoshim that died on Kiddush Hashem throughout many generations. So what is so great and even more significant with what Avraham Avinu did by the Akedah, more than everything that Yidden and all future generations have done? Ubefrat, as by Avraham, is Hashem diba by kachna. Especially that by Avraham Avinu, there's a reason why his Mesiris Nefesh was to some extent easier, because he heard it directly from Hashem. Hashem is telling him, kachna, take your son. Mashenkin the Kedoshim Shemasr Nafsham Lakdusas Hashem, the Kedoshim in all generations that sacrificed their life for Hashem's name, Gam Kiloi Dibra Hashem Bam, although Hashem did not speak to them directly. This is the language of the Alter Rebbe in Tanya when he asks this question, which means that the Mesiris Nefesh of all future generations in that sense is even greater than the Mesiris Nefesh of Avraham. Es ist nicht maspik der Empfer. It's insufficient to just simply answer as Mesiris Nefesh sein, an eigen Kind, al Kiddush Hashem, that to sacrifice one's own son, that he should be given, his life should be dedicated to Hashem, is a sach schwerer und tiefer wie zum Mesiris Nefesh sein sich allein al Kiddush Hashem. It's even more difficult, and it's an even deeper level of Mesiris Nefesh than to sacrifice one's own life for Hashem's sake. So therefore Avraham Avinu, that's ready to give up his own son on Mesiris Nefesh, is on a higher level. But this is not a sufficient answer. Weil euch in viel später Digendeiris, and much later, generations much later than Avram Avinu was given in the Sayin HaYedua from Chana b'Shiva Banel. Chana and her 7 sons, that she gave all her sons to die al Kiddush Hashem, not to serve Avodah Zarah. Vizi Alein had gesagt, and actually she herself said, Ato Avram Akadato Mizbeach Echad. You, Avram Avinu, was one Mizbeach that you brought your son on it. V'ani akadeti shiva mizbachos. And I, with my 7 sons, I gave them all away to die for Hashem's sake. And similar in later generations, in times of persecution, God forbid, given fallen, there were other cases when Yidden when Yidden not only gave up their own life on Kiddush Hashem, they gave up their own children on Kiddush Hashem as well, as is known. So therefore the question remains, what is the greatness and uniqueness about Avram Avinu's Mesiras Nefesh in the Akedah that we mentioned it all the time? Now another answer that's brought, the Sefer Ikrim is Masber, so he answers and says as follows: as the Chiddush from Akedas Yitzchak is Bashtanen in them, what's novel about Akedas Yitzchak more than other times of Mesiras Nefesh consists of the fact was Loi Nisarev B'Poyelo Akedah Shum Tzad Hechrech Klal. Avram Avinu, when he came and did this action of the Akedah, giving up his son's life for Hashem, there was no aspect of coercion involved in this at all. Because even when Hashem commands him, it also wasn't something that he had to follow. This idea is explained by Chazal al Pasuk Hashem Yireh Gomer. In the pasuk after the Akedah, where it says Hashem Yireh, so there it says as follows: Avram lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avram Avinu said to Hashem, Rebbeinu Shalayla, Master of the universe, Golui v'yedua lefanecha, it's known, it's revealed to you. Shebishah she'amarta likachna as binches echidcha shehavta es Yitzchak v'halei li la'ila. When you commanded me and said, bring my son Yitzchak, that it should be brought as a sacrifice, Hayisi yachal leimar, I could have responded and said, didn't you already say and promise that for my son Yitzchak I will have descendants? And so therefore I could have argued with you and said that I should not be fulfilling what you commanded me now. It contradicts your promise. But V'lo Marti came. Avram Avinu says, I did not say this. I conquered my compassion. And I didn't have any second thoughts on Hashem's behavior and what Hashem is asking of me. That's what Chazal say in that pasuk now. So what can we learn from this? Sheyidme mizeh mefurish, it appears to be saying here pretty clearly, sha'afilu mitzad mitzvahs Hashem yisbarach. Even after Hashem commands Avram Avinu, lehoya Avram muchrach. Avram Avinu was not forced to do this. Achar shehoya yachol lisnatzel al zeh mimenu b'tayna mitis imratza. Since Avram Avinu could have excused and explained himself with a very proper claim and a true claim, or true argument that is, that this is not what Hashem himself wants. Hashem himself promised me, ki Yitzchak yikar l'chazara. The mit, and this idea that Ikrim explains, is the Ran Masber. The Ran also explains, was da steht kach no gomer. He gives another explanation why Hashem says no, please, lashon bakosha, he's begging. Was is given a bakosha. It's only Hashem asking Avram Avinu to go ahead and do this. Nitken hechrech. But Avram Avinu was not forced to do this. This isn't the case of the Akedah. So the fact that Avram Avinu chooses to do this on his own, and he did not have any second thoughts about this, although he was not mukhrech, there was no aspect of coercion in this, that's a unique thing about the Akedah. Masha'enken, the Kedoshim, by contrast, in all of the Yidden, the holy Yidden that gave up their life for Hashem in all future generations, but some sich meisen nefesh given, al Kiddush Hashem, b'hadoyre shel ha'achrei zeh, zeh das getan mitzad dem tzivui, from v'nikdashti b'teich b'nei Yisrael. This is being done because they're following the command that Hashem says that you should sanctify Hashem's name. So therefore here, when it's being done, not purely out of your own choice, when you have an option, a way out, but it's being done because of the command, so it's not as great as Avram Avinu, that did this even though he could have excused himself. Aber das ist nicht kein Bir Maspik. However, this explanation is also insufficient. Weil, because, in addition to the point, was this is adeichik zu sagen, it's difficult to accept this idea as oib hayisi yachal leimachol. Since Avram Avinu could have responded and said to Hashem that You yourself promised me that I will have descendants from this son Yitzchak. So, and therefore, there's no aspect of coercion here. Weil als abakoshe is this nitken hechrech. So therefore, since it's only Hashem's request, so that he's not being coerced into this, so it's very difficult to accept this idea. Wenn der Eibishter allein betazach, if Hashem himself is coming and begging you to do something, even if it's a request that you can argue with this, is this a hechrech? This itself, that Hashem himself is begging you to do so, that's definitely a big level of coercion here. Especially Avram Avinu that wants to fulfill Hashem's wishes. So therefore the whole idea is difficult to accept. Is besides this, amongst the Yidden, the holy Yidden throughout generations that gave up their life to Hashem. Is nit given verbunden mit achil v'tzivah shel Torah. Amongst them were those that gave up their life for Hashem and died in situations where it was not an obligation and it was not a command of Torah. Vaderab, on the contrary, they had to search and find some way why this was permissible according to halacha. There's a discussion in Shulchan Aruch and Paiskim about this. Of them, is one even allowed to give up his life in cases where one should be transgressing, should do the Vayeira, and he should not die? Besides the three Aveiras of Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayis, and Shvichas Damim, one is supposed to be over the Vayeira and not die. So you have to find a heter to be ready to die al Kiddush Hashem even for such cases. And yet, throughout generations, there were many Yidden that did give up their life even when there was no aspect of coercion, that was not an obligation at all. So the question still remains, what's unique about the Mesiras Nefesh of Avram Avinu that we always point this out, that and that's different than this Mesiras Nefesh that is in future generations? He says, so the explanation for this is known. Was bringt sich in Chassidus? The explanation is brought in Chassidus. The Reiftu von Avram Avinu is bestanden darin. The accomplishment in the case of Avram Avinu consists of the fact was is given the Erster, was his beigestanden der Messiah from Mesiras Nefesh. He was the first. He was the first that withstood this test of Mesiras Nefesh. Was the Aschala von jeder Zach is kosher b'yoser. When you begin something new, a new breakthrough, is very difficult. Ubelashna yedua, and the famous expression, kol ha'ascholes koshes. All new beginnings is difficult to break through. So therefore, by Avram Avinu, he was the first. This was difficult. Aber nachdem wir Avram Pasach, after Avram Avinu opens up this pathway, this possibility, hat geöffnet dem Zinner from Mesiras Nefesh. He opens the channel, the pathway from Mesiras Nefesh, or the funnel of Mesiras Nefesh. Is nimshach geworden in Welt der Koyach of Mesiras Nefesh. This brought into the world this ability, this power for one to give up his life for Hashem. And der Fall is das nach dem Masach geringer. And therefore later, people that came after, the Yidden that came after Avram Avinu, it was much easier. Because the potential is here in the world already, and it's just a matter of actualizing it. By Avram Avinu, though, he was the first, and this was the initial breakthrough. That's why this is unique. So Sabbanet, move on. But regarding this answer, it's still not understood. That in Mesiras Nefesh bepoil is nimshach geworden durch Avram Avinu noch früher wie the Messiah Akeda. Even if this is true that Avram Avinu was the first, but this that Avram Avinu had Mesiras Nefesh for Hashem's sake and brought this and broke this through in this world was before this 10th Messiah of the Akeda. By the Messiah von Ur Kasdim. Avram Avinu was tested when he was still in Ur Kasdim. When Avram hat sich eingestellt in Mesiras Nefesh zu vertilliken kol mine Avodah Zarah, when Avram Avinu endangered his life to the point of self-sacrifice to wipe out all different aspects of Avodah Zarah, mefarsim sein elokus ba'olam, and to publicize Hashem's name in the world. Bis wie der Rambam bringt es euch besifrei ayat Sefer Halachos. The Rambam quotes what happened to Avram Avinu in the Sefer Halachos as bikish hamelach lahoirgai, that the king Nimrod at that time wanted to kill Avram Avinu, and he threw him into a furnace, the Nasal Nes, and a miracle occurred, and his life was saved. So Avram Avinu already at this point broke through the Koyach, brought the Koyach of Mesiras Nefesh into the world. Nachmer, even more we can say, the Nesayim von Ur Kasdim, that test of Ur Kasdim, hatten sich lechoire There's something even greater about this, even more than the test of the Akedah. Warum the Nisayon Akedah is given al Pia Dibur von Eibishten, Hashem Dibur, because as quoted before, the Alter Rebbe says by the Akedah, Avram Avinu hears Hashem himself speaking to him. Mashenken the Nisayon von Ur Kazdem. In the case of the Nisayon by Ur Kazdem, Avram Avinu on his own jumped into the fire for Hashem's sake. So that's even greater. Wie bald, as in Akedah is nicht given the erste Fall from Mesiris Nefesh. So since the Akedah is not the first case in the world of Mesiris Nefesh, and even by Avram himself it's not the first, is Hadra Kushi Leduchte, if so the question comes back, and was besteht the Meila HaMiyuchada von Nisayon Akedah. So what's unique and what's so great about the Nisayon of the Akedah, more than what Avram Avinu himself already did before by the Nisayon and Ur Kasdim? Wir haben das Verstehen, behegdim abior in der Chiddush shebeinyan amesiris nefesh b'chlal. So to understand this and to see what's unique about the Nisayon of the Akedah, we need to have a better understanding what is novel about the concept of mesiris nefesh, that one gives up his life for Hashem's sake. From dem Bier, based on this explanation that we quoted before, that it says in Chassidus, as Avram had geöffnet dem Zinner, that Avram Avinu is bringing this new possibility, this new funnel that draws in Mesiris Nefesh. Now the expression of Zinner means azach, was bringt mayim, v'chayetze v'zeh, mimakim l'makim acher. A funnel is being used to funnel water from one location to another. From Mesiris Nefesh, ba'olam, Avram Avinu is bringing the concept of Mesiris Nefesh into this world. Meaning before Avram Avinu, the possibility, the idea of Mesiris Nefesh did not exist in the level of existence in this world, and Avram Avinu is bringing it into the world. His move on, it's understood, as on them is nida the mitzias from Mesiris Nefesh ba'olam. That without Avram Avinu, the idea, the possibility of Mesiris Nefesh does not exist within this reality, within this framework of existence in our world. And Avram Avinu is creating a new breakthrough and bringing a concept of Mesiris Nefesh into the reality of this world. Now, why is that the case? The explanation for this is Mesiris Nefesh main bittul hayesh v'hamtzias. The real essence of what Mesiris Nefesh is when one completely nullifies his existence for Hashem's sake. A nivra meant, a created being means that beirat bashafen hayesh v'hamtzias, that Hashem is creating that there should be an existence. So it's two opposites. Is movement, so it's understood as a nivra within this reality of a world that exists. A nivra, created being, cannot not in any way by his own abilities reach to something to attain a level of Mesiris Nefesh that's above his existence. This defines his very existence, that Hashem is creating him to be. Similar to the expression that it says in the Gemara that a prisoner cannot free himself from prison. So too, being within the confines of this kind of reality, which is defined by the fact that it is an existence, cannot have in it a concept of Mesiris Nefesh that in essence really means that I do not exist at all, that I'm totally dedicated to Hashem and my existence is nothingness. Therefore, Avram Avinu breaking through and bringing Mesiris Nefesh into the world is compared to a funnel that brings something from a different reality into this place. There's a new power here that's bringing mimakim acher from a whole different level, higher than creation, into the world of kanen tzukom and Mesiris Nefesh. That it should be possible that one should be able to attain this level of Mesiris Nefesh to go out of your existence, out of your being. That's the explanation of why this is considered to be a unique breakthrough of Avram Avinu bringing Mesiris Nefesh into existence in this world. Now, but this idea seemingly is very difficult to understand. We find giving up one's life, self-sacrifice for a cause, even amongst Goyim, in the nations of the world. In addition to what it says even in Halacha, that even a ben noyach, regarding the 7 mitzvahs that relate to a ben noyach, that he's obligated to fulfill them to the point of giving up his life. As an event, but the question here is from what we see in practicality. As an event, kama fallen lahavdil, there were many cases to separate from the way Mesiris Nefesh is by Yidden. Men sie haben sich gelost, umbringen, zu lieb sehr amunis, v'deis, v'chulu. That we see amongst Goyim that they are ready to give up their life for their faith and for their beliefs and for their religion. So how can we say that the idea of one being dedicated to Hashem to the point that he's ready to give up his life is something so unique that you need a special koyach of Avraham Avinu to bring this power from above the reality of creation into this world? If this is something that we see, lahavdil, exists even amongst the Goyim in the world, when a person is ready to die for a cause or for a religion. So the explanation for this is as follows. Das allein, was ein Mensch ist great, a weggeben, sein Leben vor dem Eibischen wegen, just this fact that a person is ready to give up his life for Hashem's sake, is noch nicht borrowed as das is a mitis, a inyan, from Mesiris Nefesh and Bittul HaMetzias, is still not clear that this is the genuine concept of self-sacrifice, which really means when one is ready for self-nullification, that he's completely giving himself up. As can sein, it's possible, as sich moise nefesh defar, was bei ihm kommt aus al pi seichel v'cheshben. It's possible that the Mesiris Nefesh, the fact that he's giving up his life, is based on something that logically he has a certain calculation, as das lohnt sich ihm mehr wie bleiben leben, that this is something which it pays for him, it's better than to remain alive. He's going to gain something even more by giving up his life. Und a Mesiris Nefesh, was is in ganzen miyusel of Cheshbon kanal, a Mesiris Nefesh that's totally based on this kind of calculation, can sein lahavdul oich bayum esaylam. This can be even amongst Goyim. So here the Rebbe says, if it's in ganzen, the Mesiris Nefesh, by a Goy, the Mesiris Nefesh is totally just all about the gain that he feels that he's going to have by giving up his life. The Hainu meint, as durch Meise Nefesh sein sich, wird verdienen. That in his mind, he thinks to himself that by him giving up his life, he will gain something. Es wird ihm zukommen b'metzias. Mesiris Nefesh is not an act of self-sacrifice and really giving up your existence. On the contrary, the act of Mesiris Nefesh by a Goy is all just about gaining and coming and making his existence even more and larger than life and greater. Other in Tzad Shlila, or it could be the Mesiris Nefesh in the case of a guy when he thinks about what he may lose in living life. When he lives life in this world and he has a certain goal, a certain purpose, and he feels that if I can't reach this, then my life is pointless and worthless, and therefore he would be ready to give up his life, commit suicide. But dugmas alla tina belibai, when a person has a very strong emotion in his heart that he's ready to do something, and if he doesn't get it, then he gives up his life. Or natzchonis, when a person is fighting for something to the point that he's ready to die for this. By a king, that's something that comes out very strongly. But in all these cases, what's at the core of the Mesiris Nefesh? To give up one's existence? A dedication where the self-nullification? No, on the contrary. It's all completely based on the idea that there's something that I'm looking to gain here in this. That's the Mesiris Nefesh, the way it is by a guy. That emes inyan Mesiris Nefesh is, what's the genuine, the real concept of Mesiris Nefesh? As mizmeiser dem nefesh, the one is actually dedicating, giving away his life, his soul. Dem ich, the I, migit sich im ganzen ibit zum Eibischen. When one is totally and completely dedicating himself to Hashem, a mesire und sinne, when this is a dedication, that the nature of this dedication is, was is hecher von allerlei cheshbeinis von seichel oder regish v'chayetze bezeh, that is beyond any level of calculation or emotion, thinking, what will I gain from this? How do I feel about this? Mizin ganzen bottle zum Eibischen. When one is completely nullified to Hashem. And an oifen, as the eigene mitzias, is klale teufes makim, where one's own existence does not take up any place at all. It doesn't come into the calculation to think what it is that I have out of this. It's just being done completely and purely for Hashem's sake. That's the real concept of the words Mesiras Nefesh, to totally and fully dedicate one's life to Hashem. Okay, so now that we have the understanding of what real, genuine Mesiris Nefesh means, so via Shleima, now we can say based on this, as begilui, in a revealed way, belishum safik va'ilam, without any doubts that it should be expressed openly and revealed in this world, is das gewende oiftu on ilui in the Nisayan Akeda legabe dem Nisayan von Orkastem. This is the accomplishment, and this is what's greater in the Nisayan of the Akeda, even more than the Nisayan by Orkastem when Avraham Avinu himself jumped into the fire. The Mesiris Nefesh and Orkastem is bashtanan in them. What happened at the time of Orkastem, when Avraham Avinu was ready to give up his life? It consisted of the fact was Avraham hat sich Mesiris Nefesh gewen auf dem Pirsum von Amunah b'Hashem b'Olam. Avraham Avinu gave up his life for the sake of his belief in Hashem and to publicize Hashem's name and the belief in Hashem in the world. Und der Rebbe, so therefore in that case, there's room to misinterpret this. Within the framework of thinking, in the reality of this world, the way this could be interpreted is, as the Mesiras Nefesh is given up in the Kedusha, that there is some level of calculation that goes into this, even if not the level of calculation that the Rebbe spoke about in the previous sif, where one is thinking about personal gain, but some level of calculation within holiness for Hashem's sake, but still a level of calculation, which means sein Überzeugung in der Neutigkeit von Vayeira Sa'olam Shehaya Mishamish Ba'afela, Avraham Avinu's conviction of the necessity to illuminate the world, which was such a dark place, is given mit azah starkheit. He has such a strong conviction about this, bis as hat sich nicht gerechnet mit kein Menea, to the point that he did not pay attention to any obstacle. He was ready to give up his life for this tremendous cause that he was dedicated to. So this is, of course, very holy and an extremely strong level of dedication, but nevertheless, it's a level of dedication based on a certain strong feeling of connection to a cause that he's trying to accomplish here. But if you look at what happened at the Akedah for itself, it does not have here there's nothing else that's being expressed in this action. Why is this being done? What is he furthering by this? What is he going to accomplish by this act here? Nor was all that's being accomplished is he's following what Hashem wants, he's God fearing, and he does what Hashem asks from him. And that's the only reason why Hashem is giving up his life and ready to dedicate his son for Hashem. There's no calculation, even within a level of holiness, that this will further the religion and the faith in Hashem to publicize nothing. Says dabei erfüllen het gewend der Inyan vom Mefarsim sein bei Olam, auf wie tief man darf sich übergeben zum Eibischen. It will not even cause to publicize this itself to what degree a person should be ready to give up his life to Hashem. Warum wie der Even Ezra sagt, because as the Even Ezra here says on the parsha, B'shah she'okad b'noi, when Avraham Avinu went in there and he was tied his son to sacrifice him for Hashem, nobody was there, nobody was present, so nobody saw what actually happened. V'adarav, on the contrary, v'geret b'mokem acher, as explained already elsewhere, is as given l'chayre b'stire to the meaning from Pirsim al-Kusi is Barach Bailam. What Avraham Avinu was doing is actually seemingly in direct contradiction to trying to publicize the truth of Hashem in the world. Because durch Meile sein Yitzchak in Ha'ila, by sacrificing Yitzchak as a sacrifice on the Mizbeach, wird necker geworden hekische Shasl Avraham. This would uproot the seed that Avraham Avinu brought into the world, that she have descendants in this world. Und der Ingen von Pirsim al-Kus Ba'olam wird nicht gehat kein Hemshach has v'shalom. So if so, publicizing Hashem's name that Avraham Avinu was so dedicated to would not have another generation, it would not be continued in the world, God forbid. So Avraham Avinu did what he did with no level of gain at all, and not even with any calculation that what he's doing is accomplishing and gaining something even within holiness. Der ganze Inyan of Mesiras Nefesh Akedah is given nor the entire concept of Avraham Avinu being ready to dedicate his son's life, Yitzchak, and by the Akedah was purely weil der Eibishter hat gewollt und gebeten das. It's Hashem's will, and Hashem requests this. Und der Vater hat es Avraham getan. And this is the only reason why Avraham Avinu is doing this. So this is the expression of the real self and full nullification for Hashem. Und in dem ist bestanden der Reiftu von Isaiah Akedah, was Avraham Avinu is beigestanden. So this is the great accomplishment of the Nisayan of the Akedah that Avraham Avinu withstood. The Akedah Mesiras Nefesh is given by Eifen. The level of the Mesiras Nefesh here by the Akedah was to such a degree as the Sotle Gamrinit can uplegen Seichel. There's no room in any way, not in the level of Seichel the Kedusha even, that this makes sense at all. As is mer nid vi rotzen HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's completely just the will of Hashem. Ubemele, and therefore the act of Mesiras Nefesh here is Bittul HaMetzias Betachlis. This is the absolute self-nullification to Hashem, the pure and genuine Mesiras Nefesh that's being expressed here. So this is something that was revealed in the Mesiras Nefesh of the Akedah. Whereas before by Orkastim, even if that was the case, but because Avraham Avinu there was doing this as a result of him trying to publicize Hashem's name, there's room to interpret that Mesiras Nefesh as being something that Avraham Avinu is trying to accomplish something by his Mesiras Nefesh. Move on, was the Gemara sagt, based on this we could understand what the Gemara says, Shelo yoimru ein mamish barishonim. That Avram Avinu requests and begs Avram Avinu to withstand this test, so that it should not be said that whatever he withstood before is insignificant. What is this? Well, how could the Gemara say this? If God forbid Avram Avinu would not withstand this test of the Akedah, there would be room to mistake. People would say, as er ist beigestanden, the friedige Nisyanis, der Fahr, was is eine gewinn behessung zu Sichloi de Kedusha. Only reason he withstood all previous tests is because it was something that was in accordance with the way he saw things logically, intellectually, in a holy level, of course, but nevertheless still with a certain level of calculation of looking to what he's going to gain spiritually. Of Mesiris Nefesh Mamish, but total and literal, full self-sacrifice. The term Mamisher means etzem umamashas nefesh, the very essence and core of his soul. Is that being dedicated without thinking and what's being gained out of this? Not only the eye, but even in holiness, what's coming out of this? Is al kaponim eni ideya. Regarding previous tests, it's not clearly expressed, even if it's the case that that's really where it stemmed from by Avraham Avinu, but it's not yet clearly expressed in the world. But when Avraham Avinu withstood this test of the Akedah, and here this was a test that it was clear that there's no gain, not even on a holy level at all to this. So now this retroactively revealed as euch the Nisyanis Harishainim is a Beigestanden mit Mesiris Nefesh Mamish. That even the earlier tests, the core of that Mesiris Nefesh was not about any gain that came out of it, even in a spiritual sense, but it was really a full and genuine self-sacrifice. With fulle Avwegegebenkeit v'tachlis abittel, with a complete and total full dedication to Hashem, with the ultimate and total self-nullification to Hashem. That's what Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu. This kind of test will reveal the essence and the core of the Mesiris Nefesh of Avraham by all the other tests as well. Das is the beer and them. This is the explanation for what was quoted before, the pshat that it says in Chassidus, why the Mesiris Nefesh of Avraham Avinu was so great. Was psichas atzinner ba'olam. Because Avraham Avinu, he opened the channel, the funnel for Mesiris Nefesh in the world. That Mesiris Nefesh is by Messiah Akedah. This was specifically by the Akedah. Unit durch the Messiah durch Kastem. And this was not yet accomplished by the Messiah earlier, by your custom when Avraham Avinu was thrown into the fire. Psichas hatzinerat Mesiris Nefesh is. What is this idea that Avraham Avinu was opening the funnel to bring Mesiris Nefesh into the world? As Avraham Avinu hat meirish gewen zu Yidden der Koyach HaMesiris Nefesh Mamish. It's Avraham Avinu bequeathing to the Yidden, to all of the descendants, the power of real Mesiris Nefesh, emes Mesiris Nefesh. Biz, and he's giving this to his children in such a manner as the emes ratzon von jeden Yidden l'ritzayin chem mamish. Das is the emes ratzon von jeden Yidden l'ritzayin chem mamish. This becomes the true desire of every Yid, literally. So therefore, when a Yid gives up his life for Hashem's sake, even if externally it seems like that there's some level of calculation that's involved in this, but that's not that's at the core of what is happening here. Is das be'emes nit a Mesiris Nefesh api cheshbon, but really it's not a Mesiris Nefesh that's based on those calculations. That may be an external layer of what's going on, nor Mesiris Nefesh mamish. Deeper though, it's a result of the core of the soul of a Yid that now has this power of Mesiris Nefesh that Avraham Avinu brought into the existence of the world and into the existence of a Yid. A Yid gibt weg sein ganzen Mamoshes zum Eibischen. A Yid gives away his entire existence to Hashem, l'mayla mikol cheshbon, beyond any calculation, vi the Nisayon Akedah, just like the test of the Akedah. And this is the what Avraham Avinu opened up the funnel for. This is the new reality of the existence of a Yid in this world, here below, that Avraham Avinu brought into the world. Bis wie der Alter Rebbe bringt in Shulchan Aruch, and as the Alter Rebbe explains in Shulchan Aruch regarding saying the Parsha of the Akedah every day, as Toiv loime b'chol yom Parsha sa Akedah chulu, it's a good idea to say the Parsha of the Akedah every day. V'gam kedei lachniya yitzroi lavad Hashem yizbarach, because by saying the story of the Akedah, this will help a Yid also to subdue his own evil inclination, lavad Hashem yizbarach, to serve Hashem, k'moi shemasar Yitzchak nafshay, just like Yitzchak gave up his life for Hashem. So when you read this, so seemingly you can ask, Wie kann man zugleichen die Aveide von jeden Yiden? Lachnia Yitzrei Laved Hashem Yisbarach. How could you compare every Yid that's working and he's struggling and he's subduing his Yetzer Hara to serve Hashem to them was Masa Yitzchak Nafshay? Was is given Mesiris Nefesh betachlis Hashleimus Kanal, to what Yitzchak did, which was the highest level of Mesiris Nefesh, as explained, the ultimate and real level of Mesiris Nefesh. No, but what's being said here in the words of the Alter Rebbe is, weil durch dem was Avram hat Beseich gewähnt, dem Zinner of Mesiris Nefesh Mamish, through the fact that Avram Avinu opened up this funnel and brought Mesiris Nefesh to its highest degree, Mesiris Nefesh Mamish, the very core of Mesiris Nefesh, and the very core of the Yid, he revealed this in the world, is jeder Aveide von an Yidden, every time a Yid is serving Hashem and he's struggling and is fighting, welche is doch Zera Avram, a ben v'yodesh Avram, and he's a descendant, and therefore he inherits that power from Avram, Meirasha Kehilas Yaakov, the inheritance of the congregation of all Yidden, Lachnia Yitzrei, Lav Hashem Yisbarach, Kamoi Yitzchak, Kamoi Shemasa Yitzchak Nafshay. Every time a Yid has his Mesiris Nefesh on his level, where he's fighting against the Yetzer Hara, is in essence the same core of Mesiris Nefesh by Yitzchak. So his Punkt, wie Avram führt him to the Akedah. Every Yid, when he is at that moment fighting the Yetzer Hara, it's Avram Avinu, it's the power of Avram Avinu that's taking this Yid now at this time, he's taking him to the Akedah. Weil das ist der Emissaratzen für jeden Yidden, sich abgeben mamish im Eibishten. Because this is the true desire of every Yid. Every time there's a struggle and a Yid has to fight back, what's really at the core of his ability to fight back? Even if externally it seems like it's based on different calculations, but it's really at the core, the power of the Yid is because it's the pure self-nullification to Hashem that he's being empowered with by Avram Avinu that's taking him and giving him that power for this Mesiris Nefesh. That's the reason why we say the Parsha of the Akedah every day, just like the Akedah of Yitzchak himself that applies to the Avodah of every Yid on a daily basis.